He got inches from mine, nose to nose, yelling, snarling, radiating fury. I backed up, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. My hands slid into my bag, fingers fumbling blindly until they wrapped around my pocket knife. I didn't want to use it, but in that moment, I wasn't sure I'd have a choice. Welcome to Dark Reddit, your late-night escape into eerie calm. I'm Alex, your voice in the dark and your guide through the unknown. This is Podcast 20, a shadowy chapter in our ever-growing collection of sleepless nights. Tonight's journey spans 1 hour, a series of chilling tales whispered into your ears softly, slowly, designed to help your mind drift while the darkness unfolds around you. Before we begin, find a quiet, comfortable place to rest. Dim the lights, silence your world, and take one slow, steady breath. Now, close your eyes. Every story in tonight's episode is new, uncharted, untold, and unearthed from the darker corners of Reddit. Tales of strangers, shadows, and things that don't always stay in the past. Let your body grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift. You don't need to watch. You only need to listen. You're safe here. Now, let the night begin. He was in the elevator for 30 minutes, and then he wasn't. Some stories stick to your skin. No matter how much sleep you get, how much daylight you walk into the next morning, they stay. This one, it happened just last night, and I'm still trying to make sense of it. Or maybe trying not to. Let me back up. My dad's an internist at a hospital that's built like a maze. Different buildings for different departments. Think heart diseases in one corner, lungs in another, neurology off somewhere else. I've been there before, but only during the day. It's a totally different place at night. He asked me to come with him yesterday around 10 p.m. to grab some stuff he left behind in his office. No big deal. I figured we'd be in and out. But to get where we needed to go, we had to pass through building J9. Now, J9 isn't exactly functional. It's like someone started to build it and then just gave up. It's unfinished and used, and according to my dad, probably abandoned for now, though nobody seems to know for sure. It sits quiet and forgotten, wedged between the departments that are actually alive with patients and staff. We entered J9, pitch black, no lights. The second we stepped in, the temperature felt wrong, like we were walking into a vacuum where even the air gave up. My dad switched on his phone's flashlight, and we kept moving, the beam catching flashes of metal framing, exposed wires, and half-constructed walls. Then we saw him. He was walking toward us. A man. His appearance was off. His hair stood straight up on the sides, like two wild wings frozen mid-flap, but the center of his scalp was bald. His beard was long, unnaturally long, and his skin looked grayish in the flashlight's glow. His clothes, couldn't tell you. I was too distracted by the way he stared. Not a glance, not curiosity. He looked at us like he knew us. My dad, ever the calm one, casually said, "Hey, can you open the lights here?" He figured the guy worked there. Who else would be wandering around a dead building? The man didn't respond, not even a blink. He just walked silently past us and into the elevator. Weird, yeah, but not terrifying. Not yet. We brushed it off and made it to the head of department's office, where my dad spent 30 minutes talking about God knows what. I kept glancing at the hallway, that dark mouth of J9 looming just behind the door. Eventually, it was time to go. Dad remembered he still needed to grab his mug and laptop from his own office, which was a few floors up, but the fastest way back was through the same elevator the guy had used earlier. We pressed the button. It dinged open, and there he was, still in the elevator. 30 minutes later, just standing there like he'd been waiting, like time hadn't passed for him. He didn't look surprised to see us again, didn't say anything, just resumed his staring. First at me, then my dad, back to me. We stepped in. The doors closed. The tension in that small box was unbearable. I looked at my dad with that silent expression every kid learns from their parent. "Do you see this too?" He did. I could see it in the tight way he was holding his coffee cup, like he might throw it at the guy any second. The elevator began to move, then a jolt, and it stopped, dead. My dad calmly pulled out his phone and called the HOD. "Hey!" The elevator just stopped working. I leaned away from the guy as far as I could. He hadn't moved. Just that same slow turning of his head between us. My dad, still on the phone, added, "By the way, who's the guy working in J9? The HOD paused. "What guy?" "This guy," my dad said, clearly trying not to say too much in front of him. "He was walking around in there earlier. He hasn't said a word." HOD. "No one works in J9. That building's shut down." My dad hung up. His expression didn't change much, but I saw something flicker across his face. Doubt, maybe fear. He told me to hit the emergency button, but the guy was standing directly in front of it. So now I had to reach around this silent stranger to press it. I leaned in, heart thundering in my ears, and hit the button. The elevator groaned to life, finally starting to move again. And still, the guy stared. As we approached our floor, my dad gave him a little wave. "You okay?" No response, just eyes shifting back and forth. Me, Dad. The doors opened. We stepped out. The guy didn't move. 10 seconds. That's all we needed to grab my dad's stuff from his office. We came back, pressed the elevator button. The door slid open. Empty. The elevator had not moved. We looked at each other. "Where'd he go?" I asked, whispering like the walls were listening. My dad didn't answer. He just shook his head, lips pressed tight, as we stepped in and rode down to the parking garage. We walked quickly, didn't talk until we were safely back in the car. Engine on. Doors locked. He drove. I sat in silence, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. There was no place for him to go. No floors passed. No time elapsed. No sounds of footsteps in the hall. He was there, and then he wasn't. It was one of those shifts where everything felt still. The store was too quiet. The overhead lights buzzed a little louder than usual, and the minutes ticked down like molasses. Just another Wednesday night at the local grocery store, or so I thought. I'm 16. I work evenings after school, 3 nights a week, mostly from 6 to 10. It's a small town and we don't get much excitement. Most nights, I know half the people who come through the doors. But that night, this past Wednesday, someone walked in who didn't belong. I was near the front of the store, straightening cans in aisle 2, when I heard the soft chime of the entrance. Out of instinct, I glanced over and froze. The man who walked in wasn't immediately frightening, but wrong. That's the only word I can use. Average height, maybe 5 feet 10 inches. Pale skin, really pale like chalk. He looked like someone who'd never been in the sun. His clothes were ordinary enough, a gray hoodie, black jeans, but they didn't fit. The hoodie was tight around his neck like it had shrunk in the wash, and the sleeves barely reached his wrists. He walked like he didn't know how. Every step was stiff. His arms hung motionless at his sides, and when his shoes hit the tile floor, they landed with a weird heaviness, like he was being moved rather than moving himself, like a puppet. I told myself to stop being paranoid. People walk weird all the time, right? But then I saw his face. That's when everything inside me screamed that something was wrong. He passed me without looking up, but even in that brief glance, I noticed how off his features were. His skin looked too smooth, not just clear or well-kept, plastic smooth, almost glossy. His lips were pale, his nose too sharp, and his eyes, they were sunken, like deep set into his skull, but not in a way that suggested tiredness or illness, just hollow. And when he blinked, he did it slowly, like someone mimicking the idea of blinking, like he was told what blinking was, but didn't quite understand how to do it naturally. I pretended not to notice. I went back to my cans. A few minutes later, my manager asked me to restock the bread shelves near the back. I was relieved, honestly. I didn't want to be anywhere near the front if that guy came back. I grabbed the stock cart and started heading down the frozen food aisle when I saw him again. Just standing there in the middle of the aisle. No cart, no basket, no groceries. He hadn't picked up a single thing. He turned when he noticed me, and his face lit up. Not in a warm way. More like an imitation of what someone thought a friendly look should be. A grin that didn't reach his eyes. He approached, and then he spoke. "Where is the soda?" he asked, monotone. Cold, like a voice without a soul behind it. Chilled me. I pointed toward the drink aisle and said, aisle 6, 3rd row, right side. He stared at me a beat too long. Then, word for word, he repeated what I had just said. Aisle 6, 3rd row, right side. Then he nodded once, like checking a box. "Thank you." And he turned and walked away. The repetition didn't seem like a memory lapse or a stutter. It was deliberate, like he was recording the phrase, or practicing it. I just stood there, rooted to the spot for a few seconds. My skin prickled. My body was yelling at me to leave. I went back to my manager and told her there was a weird guy in the store. She didn't see him come in, and when I tried to find him again, he was gone. Now, we're a small store, open layout, not a lot of places to hide. You'd see someone walking out, but no one did. I asked the cashier later, and she said she remembered someone walking strangely, like his spine didn't bend, she said, but she never saw him buy anything. No one rang him up. By the time I clocked out, my stomach was tight with nerves. I went home, tried to sleep, but I couldn't get that face out of my head. I replayed the whole thing over and over. The too smooth skin, the stiff walk, the blank expression, that strange echoing of my own words. But what stuck with me most was his eyes. There was nothing behind them. No curiosity, no annoyance, no life, They weren't looking at things. They were scanning, like a machine might. It's been a few days, and I haven't seen him again. But I can't stop thinking, what if he wasn't human? What if he was something pretending to be, testing how well it could fit in? A week ago, I would have laughed at myself for even considering that. But now I double-check every face that walks through that grocery store door. Because I swear, that man wasn't just out of place. He didn't belong to this world. I usually scroll right past all those true stories on Reddit. You know, the ones paranormal, creepy, dramatic, almost too perfect to be real. I roll my eyes and keep scrolling. But I guess tonight I'm feeling a little different. Because this story I'm about to tell you, it's real. I know it's real because I lived it. My name's Will. I grew up in a rough part of town, where trouble wasn't just around the corner. It lived on your street. I've got stories, man. The kind you don't want. I've seen things a kid shouldn't have to see. But this story about my friend Tyler, this one hits different. Still does, even years later. Tyler's house was always a kind of safe haven for me. His family wasn't rich, but they had stability. They had dinner together, went to church, had clean floors and parents that didn't yell. His house sat out on a county road, tucked between patches of woods and open land. His neighbors were spaced out, a few houses down, but not exactly shouting distance. It was peaceful, safe, or it seemed that way. Behind his house was a long stretch of property, woods at the edge and 3 old sheds that looked like miniature log cabins. They were handmade, crooked, the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a horror movie. In daylight, they looked quirky. At night, they looked like something evil slept in them. And on the night I'll never forget, it felt like something did. We were in middle school, 13, maybe 14. It was a Friday night, and like always, I had packed my backpack in the morning to stay the weekend at Tyler's. We played Kingdom Hearts on his PS2 until his parents told us to shut it down. Then came the usual whispering in the dark, laughing too loud, sneaking soda from the fridge. That's when it started. We were in the kitchen, moving quiet as mice. Tyler had just cracked open a can of Mountain Dew when I saw it. A light flicker inside the shed closest to the house. Just for a second. A swaying, bouncing kind of light, like a flashlight held in a shaking hand. I slammed the fridge door shut and nearly caught his fingers in it. He got mad, but I told him what I saw. We both pressed our faces to the big glass sliding door, eyes wide, breath held. Nothing. We stood there for 10 minutes in silence. Then there it was again, a faint glow, swaying, moving inside the shed. We didn't scream. We didn't even move. We just ran. Straight to his room. Hearts pounding so loud I was sure someone could hear it. We told ourselves it was nothing, just our imagination. Maybe headlights bouncing off something. We wanted to believe that, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Neither could Tyler. So when I stayed over the next weekend, we wanted answers. Same routine. Parents asleep. Darkness thick as molasses. The only sound was the low hum of his mom's box fan. We checked the windows. Nothing. Played some games for a bit. Checked again around 2 a.m. Still nothing. Then, God help us, we got the bright idea to go outside. I don't remember why. Maybe to get a closer look. Maybe to see if the shed door was locked. Maybe just 2 dumb kids trying to prove we weren't scared. We stepped out onto the back porch. It was high off the ground, creaking under our weight. The woods beyond the sheds looked like a wall of blackness. No crickets, no wind, just stillness. And then the shed door creaked open. We didn't breathe. Out stepped a man, thin, hunched. His clothes looked like they'd been dug out of the dirt. His hair was long, stringy, stuck to the sides of his face like wet straw. His skin sagged in places, but his movements were jerky. Wrong. He didn't see us at first. He was looking toward the house, slow steps in our direction. When his head finally turned and we locked eyes, it was like time froze. Then he ran, and so did we. I screamed. Tyler screamed. We slammed the sliding door shut, didn't even lock it, just bolted down the hall and crashed into his parents' room. We were sobbing, talking over each other, trying to explain. His dad grabbed a flashlight and headed out. Nothing. No man. No tracks. Just the shed door left open. Probably a raccoon, he muttered. We'll check it in the morning. I wanted to believe that, but I couldn't forget what I saw. The next day, his dad was out by the shed. We watched from the porch as he kicked around the leaves and junk inside. He found a pocket knife and a pile of carved wooden figures, small, crude things. Faces without features. Smooth, pale wood, freshly cut. He brushed it off. Probably old junk. Been there for years. But it hadn't. I know it hadn't. We would have seen them. We played around those sheds during the day. We'd have noticed. Tyler didn't like going near them after that. Neither did I. But the weirdness didn't stop. Sometimes, when we were outside as the sun dipped low, we'd hear whistling. Short, sharp notes. Not a tune, not a song, just signals. Maybe birds. That's what everyone said. But I swear to God, every time we heard it, it was coming from the woods. I'm older now. I live in a different town, and those nights are just memories. But sometimes when I'm walking outside late at night and the trees rustle just right, I remember that feeling, that sense that someone is watching, that the dark isn't empty. And when I pass an old shed or see a flashlight bobbing in the distance, I don't investigate. I don't ask questions, because I know some doors, like the one to that shed, should have stayed shut. I've never been the type to chase ghost stories or talk about glitches in the Matrix. I scroll past those online, shake my head, and think, yeah, okay. But what happened to me when I was 12? I saw it. I stood there. It was me. This isn't something I just made up to be spooky. This really happened. And I still think about it way more than I want to. It was in Pennsylvania just before we moved to North Carolina. I still remember how the air smelled, like dry leaves and rubber mulch from the playground across the street. We lived in this corner townhouse, kind of tucked against a stretch of field. It wasn't huge, but big enough for a couple kids to lose themselves in a game of tag or pretend they were running through a movie set. Beyond the field were woods. Tall, quiet trees that always looked a little too dark, even during the day. The field was my last stop before the move. Our house was empty, all echoey and weird. I had nothing to do but wait while the grown-ups handled boxes and phone calls. So I wandered out to the place I had played in for years, said my little goodbye in my own way. I was wearing this bright pink t-shirt that said, "Boys are losers," in glittery bubble letters. Yeah, don't judge, it was Walmart fashion circa preteen angst. My skinny jeans had fake rhinestones on the pockets, and my shoes were these sketchy light-up sneakers that blinked blue when I walked. I looked ridiculous, probably, but I was just a kid. That's what makes this even weirder, because as I stepped into the middle of the field, just past the first patch of yellow grass, I saw me. She was standing still, not running, not playing, just standing. Same shirt, same jeans, same stupid shoes. Her face was my face, my messy ponytail, even the faint birthmark on my neck. And she was staring right at me. My stomach dropped in this way I can't even explain. It wasn't like seeing your reflection, it felt wrong. Like the world had tilted just a little bit off balance. My brain was trying to figure out how I was looking at myself, outside, in a field where no mirrors or tricks could exist. I took a step forward. So did she. Not perfectly in sync, but just close enough to freak me out. I thought maybe it was a prank. A twin I didn't know I had? A girl trying to mess with me? But no, her eyes, they weren't playful. They were heavy, sad, like she was carrying something I wasn't supposed to understand yet. Then she spoke. She said, "Don't leave," just like that. Soft, calm, but full of something desperate underneath. Like if I left, something bad would happen. I didn't say anything, couldn't. I just stared. She shook her head slowly, eyes locked on mine, and then turned and walked back toward the tree line. No light-up shoes flashing, no rustling leaves, just gone. And then I was alone again. I never told my parents. I mean, what was I supposed to say? "Hey, I just saw a clone of myself in the field, and she told me not to move to North Carolina." They were stressed enough. I let it go, or tried to, but something about that memory stuck. Even now, thinking about it makes my skin crawl. I wasn't tired. I wasn't sleep deprived. There were no reflections, no puddles, no mirrors. It was me out there where no one else should have been. I tried to chalk it up to stress. Moving is weird. Your brain plays tricks on you, right? Except that wasn't the first weird thing I'd experienced in that neighborhood. A few years before that, maybe when I was 7, there were these 2 kids I used to play with at the park. A brother and sister, I think. I never knew their last names, and they didn't know mine. We weren't close, just park friends. You know the type, you see them around, play tag, then go your separate ways. One day, out of nowhere, they started telling me they could see ghosts. I rolled my eyes, said, "Prove it." And they did. They started naming people. People I knew, dead people. Family members I hadn't even told my classmates about, let alone 2 kids I met at a jungle gym. They described how they died, what they looked like, and they were right. I went home and asked my mom questions I shouldn't have even known to ask, and she just stared at me, asking how I knew. I told her some kids at the park, and she brushed it off as me overhearing something. But I know I didn't. I hadn't even known those stories before they told me. So now, years later, I can't help but wonder, were they connected? Did those kids see something in me? Some kind of energy or shadow or copy? Was that version of me in the field some kind of warning? A leftover piece of my past trying to anchor me in place? Or maybe it wasn't me at all. Maybe it was something using me, taking my shape, knowing it would get close if it wore my skin. I don't know. I never saw that copy again. Not in NC, not in dreams, not in reflections. But that feeling of being watched by yourself never really left. I've never figured out what any of it meant. People don't believe me when I talk about it. I get it. If someone told me they saw their own double in a field, I'd laugh too. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet and still, I remember her voice. Don't leave. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd listened. It's strange how some memories blur over time. Faces soften, voices fade. Even moments that once meant the world get tucked away in dust-covered corners of the mind. But not this one. Not the sound I heard in those Tennessee mountains. Not the look in my papa's eyes. That memory is carved into me, sharp and unshakable. I was 8, maybe 9. Just a kid with muddy boots, a too big camo jacket, and wide eyes that hadn't yet learned what to be afraid of. But I knew I loved the outdoors and I adored my pawpaw. He was 57 at the time. Stoic, kind, sun-wrinkled and always smelling like pine needles and tobacco. A man raised on hunting, fishing, tracking. The kind of guy who knew what time it was by the angle of the sun and could identify a bird by the twitch of its wing. And when I was old enough to start tagging along, he brought me in like I'd always been part of it. Side by side, he taught me everything, how to walk quiet, how to read deer tracks, what kind of tree was what. I'd never felt more alive than when I was out in those woods with him. That day started just like any other trip. A long, winding drive through the endless curves of the Tennessee mountains. That road alone could churn your stomach. It felt like it looped back on itself 5 times before you got anywhere. But when we finally arrived, the nausea gave way to that familiar, deep, breath in your lungs kind of calm. Trees everywhere. No houses. No lights. Just gravel and green and stillness. We hiked in about 10 minutes and set up above an old, overgrown logging road. The trees were thick around it, silent but somehow watching. We sat there for hours, whispering about nothing, passing the time in quiet like only hunters can. Eventually, a doe stepped out. I remember the way I trembled when I saw her. It wasn't fear, it was the thrill of the moment. Papa raised the rifle. One clean shot. She dropped. It was our first deer together. I'll never forget how proud he looked, or how proud I felt. We took pictures with the deer. Field dressed her like he showed me, and started dragging her back toward the truck. That's when things changed. At first, it was just the sound of coyotes. Distant, high-pitched yelps echoing behind us. Papa heard them and gave me a look. Move faster, it said. Coyotes weren't unusual, but you don't mess around when you've got fresh blood trailing behind you. Then we heard it. A screech, somewhere between a scream and a howl, tore through the air from down the hill below us. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't anything I'd ever heard in the woods. Sounded wrong. Too loud. Too long. Cut through the trees like it didn't belong in this world. It made my skin go ice cold. I stopped dead in my tracks and looked at my pawpaw. Now here's the thing. That man didn't scare easy. He'd stared down bears, crossed swollen rivers, and spent his life deep in the backwoods. But in that moment, I saw something in him I had never seen before. His eyes were wide, not curious, worried. I asked him, "Pawpaw, what was that?" He didn't answer right away, just looked back down the hill toward where the sound had come from. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Boy, I've never heard that in my life. It's time to go. That might not sound like much, but coming from him, that chilled me to the bone. This was the man who once laughed when we spotted a copperhead too close for comfort. The man who called bobcats pests and walked toward them, not away. If he didn't know what made that sound, then I didn't want to know either. We dragged the deer faster. The trees felt closer, heavier. The air was thick with silence, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see something climbing up the hill after us. But there was nothing except that feeling, that we weren't alone. We didn't talk again until we got to the truck. He tossed the deer in the bed, slammed the tailgate, and muttered something about making it back before dark. We made it, obviously, but that night I kept thinking about the sound, playing it over and over in my head. Pawpaw never brought it up again, not once, and when I tried to mention it a couple months later, he just grunted and said, "Probably a sick coyote. Sometimes they sound strange." But that wasn't a coyote. I know it, and deep down I think he did too. Years have gone by since then. We moved away not long after. Different town, different woods. Pawpaw's older now, doesn't hunt much anymore. But sometimes, when we sit on the porch together and talk about the good old days, I'll catch him glancing off toward the trees like he's listening for something. I never heard that sound again. I never want to, but I still wonder, what was it? Some people talk about cryptids, skinwalkers, things that live out in the wild places we pretend don't exist anymore. I'm not saying that's what it was, but I'm not saying it wasn't either. Because when you grow up in the woods, you learn that most things make sense. A twig snap, a rustle, a growl, you learn the rhythm. But every now and then, something breaks that rhythm. And when it does, even the most seasoned hunters don't stick around to figure out why. April 19th wasn't supposed to be anything more than another day on the clock. Just me. A ball pit, a fever, and a podcast queued up for break. But things don't always go the way you plan. Some days turn into warnings. Some days you learn what fear actually feels like. I want to be clear, this really happened. And even now, my heart races when I think about it. I work at a fun center. The kind with a ball pit, a bouncy house, sticky fingers, and endless shrieking laughter. The kind of place where kids run wild and the smell of pizza sauce clings to the walls. Most days, it's just noise and chaos and trying not to trip over toddlers. Most parents are decent. Overwhelmed, maybe. Tired, sure. But decent. And then there are the others. Donald, let's call him that, was one of those others. The first time I met him, he didn't look like trouble. He wore black sweatpants and a gray t-shirt, had freckled, light brown skin and short curly hair. He had this easy smile and polite air that made you let your guard down. His boys were sweet, well-behaved, full of energy, and he talked about them with warmth that felt genuine. He sat next to me at the bouncy house, even though there were plenty of open benches. We chatted. Felt normal at first, and then it didn't. He said he was a single dad, that it was hard. I nodded sympathetically, thinking of my mom and everything she did after my dad left. But then he started getting personal, asking if I was in college, smiling a little too much when I told him I was still in high school. Then came the loaded question, "How old are you?" I told him, 17. His eyes lit up in a way that made my skin crawl. Then came more, asking about my birthday, noticing my ring, asking if I had a boyfriend. When he leaned in, told me I could chill and hang out at his place, my breath caught. That same easy smile was plastered on his face, but his eyes were wrong. Too still, too hungry. I managed to nod and ducked away, pretending to check something in the bouncy house. I don't remember how I didn't cry right there. He left with his kids eventually, throwing a too casual, "See you soon" over his shoulder. I hoped I never would. April 19th. I was sick, but I showed up anyway. Masked, tired, ready to push through. I was assigned to the ball pit. Things were calm. Kids were laughing. I was just about to pick up a loose foam ball when the door chimed. Donald's kids walked in, and then he followed. My stomach dropped. He didn't say anything at first. Didn't even look at me. Maybe it was the mask. I prayed it was the mask. I let the kids in quietly. He sat on a bench, messing with his phone, surrounded by other parents. I felt a little safer in the crowd. 5 minutes later, I got my break. I went outside, called my parents. They were alarmed. My mom insisted I tell my manager. I promised I would. When I came back in, Donald and the kids were gone. I stayed by the ball pit cleaning, cautious, always glancing behind me. I bent down to pick up a few balls, stood to sweep, and there he was. Donald, alone, phone out, camera up. He was filming. He wasn't facing the kids this time. He was sweeping his phone slowly, deliberately across the area, toward me. I turned away quickly, hoping he'd lose interest. But when I glanced back, he was right behind me, less than 2 feet. I froze. He yanked his phone down suddenly, as if he hadn't meant to be caught, and speed walked away. I tried to rationalize. Maybe he was FaceTiming someone. Maybe it was innocent. But the question haunted me. How long had he been filming? A few minutes later, he came back, again without his children. His phone was pointed right at the kids playing in the ball pit. My blood boiled. That was it. I walked up to him, my voice sharp, strained with fear but firm. "Sir, please do not film children you don't know." He didn't flinch, just looked at me and said, calm as ever, "I'm not. I'm showing my wife. See?" He tilted his phone to me just for a second. Enough time to see the FaceTime screen. Enough time to see that the woman's image didn't move. That there was no reflection of me in the camera. It wasn't a FaceTime call. It was a screenshot. And he knew I knew. He yanked the phone back to his chest and walked away. Grabbed his kids. Left. Just like that. My heart was hammering. My hands were shaking. I kept going over everything, what he said the first time, what he said now. He told me he was single. Now he had a wife? So who was the woman on the phone? Was she even real? When I saw my manager, I finally let it all spill. Every detail. The weird comments. The flirting. The filming. The fake FaceTime. He looked horrified. Said he'd text our head manager and get Donald banned immediately. But I stopped him. Why? Because I was scared. Because if Donald got banned the day after I confronted him, he'd know it was me. And then what? What would he do with the videos he already took? What else did he know? He doesn't know where I live. Doesn't know my last name. But it doesn't take much these days. People can find things. I've seen it happen. My manager nodded, promised it would be taken care of. I nodded back, even though I wasn't sure what taken care of meant anymore. I left that night with questions still buzzing in my head. Still do. What if I hadn't been wearing a mask? What if I'd been alone? What if no one believed me? But they did. And now I've written it down so you believe me too. Donald is real. He's out there, maybe smiling, maybe filming someone else. But I pray to God he never walks through our doors again. And if he does, I pray I'm not alone. The human mind has this strange way of categorizing what it sees. Familiar, strange, safe, dangerous, real, unbelievable. But what happens when something doesn't fit into any of those boxes? 2 nights ago, I saw something I still can't explain, and I haven't been able to sleep since. It was an ordinary day. The kind where the sky is heavy with heat and the buzz of Mumbai never lets up. Not even for a second. My mom and I had just finished running a bunch of errands near the railway station. We were both exhausted, sweaty, and starving. We stopped at one of those tiny food stalls on the side of the road. The ones that sell pav bhaji and vada pav and fill the air with the smell of spice and frying oil. As we stood there, waiting for our order, I glanced across the road. That's when I saw her. At first glance, nothing was too odd. She was standing still, almost too still. Her skin was extremely dark, not just naturally, but something else. It didn't look like a natural shade of melanin. It looked like ash had been rubbed into her pores, like she'd emerged from smoke or soot. I couldn't explain why, but my stomach twisted the moment I laid eyes on her. Still, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just a passerby. Maybe my brain was being weird from the hunger and heat. We got our food and began walking. The stall faded into the background behind us, replaced by honking cars, the occasional cow blocking traffic, and the chatter of the city. And then I saw her again. She was behind us now, not far, close. She hadn't been anywhere near us when we crossed the road. I know that. I looked both ways like always. She wasn't there, but now she was. I nudged my mom subtly. That woman from earlier. She's behind us, I murmured. Mom glanced over her shoulder casually, then picked up her pace. That was all the confirmation I needed. She saw it too. I didn't dare look again for too long, just quick glances. But what I saw made my blood feel thick and cold in my veins. The woman's hair was disheveled, wild, like it hadn't been brushed in weeks. Her skin was mottled with what looked like scars or bruises. Around her neck, I thought I saw something, long, pale marks, like old rope burns or deep scratches. Maybe I imagined it. I don't know. I didn't want to look too closely, but her face was the worst part. She was crying, but it wasn't normal. Not the kind of cry you hear in pain or grief. It was wrong. Her mouth was open too wide, her lips trembling, her jaw quivering like it couldn't hold itself steady. No sound came out that I could hear, but her eyes were completely soaked, bloodshot, and distant, like she wasn't crying for something that just happened. She was crying for something that never ended. We kept walking, fast, almost jogging, but every time we turned a corner or crossed a street, she was still there, a few steps behind. Always, she never called out, never tried to talk to us, Her presence felt stuck somewhere between a person and a thing. Something off, out of sync, out of place. As she crossed one of the narrower roads behind us, her body seemed to move differently. I don't know how to describe it. Almost like her steps weren't matching the movement of her arms. Like something inside her was trying to remember how to walk, but forgetting as she went. My mom whispered, "Don't turn around. Just keep walking." I nodded. My fingers clenched around the food packet so hard that oil soaked through the paper. We reached the edge of our neighborhood, turned onto our lane, and she didn't follow. When I finally looked back, she was gone. Just like that. No sound, no trace. No one else around even seemed to notice her in the first place. It was like she had just disappeared. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, the fan creaking above me, and all I could see behind my eyelids was her face. That cry, it didn't sound out loud, but somehow I still heard it. It echoed in a place beneath my thoughts, in that primal corner of the brain that doesn't understand words, only fear. Was she real? Was she just someone in the middle of a terrible mental health crisis? Maybe homeless, maybe hurt. That's what I tried to tell myself. But the more I thought about it, the more that answer didn't feel right. It wasn't just the crying, or the walking, or the skin. It was the fact that we were surrounded by people, and no one else seemed to see her. I keep wondering if we turned around, would she still have been there? Or would she have been closer? Would she have spoken? There's a part of me that wants to go back to that food stall. Maybe someone else saw her. Maybe someone else knows something. But a bigger part of me doesn't want to see her again, because I don't think she was lost. I don't think she was asking for help. I think she was following. And I don't know what would have happened if we had stopped. Back in 2023, I made one of the worst decisions of my life. It started with something simple, picking up mail from my parents' place. Normal, uneventful. I'd done it 100 times. But this time, there was a text waiting for me from someone I hadn't talked to in a while. Let's call him Mark. Now, friend is a generous word. Mark had a history. Sketchy behavior, hard drugs, emotional manipulation, and a few too many not-so-subtle attempts to get with me, even after I'd made it clear we were just friends. I'd been avoiding him for months, but on that day, I let my guard down. His apartment wasn't far. I figured a quick visit would shut him up for good. So I said yes. I texted him when I got there. Mark came out to open the gate, looking smaller than I remembered. 5'3", thin, twitchy. But it wasn't his size that made me uneasy. It was the energy, like a storm trapped under his skin. We climbed 3 flights of stairs to a modest unit on the left. For a low-income place, it was surprisingly clean. Almost too clean, like he needed to control something in his life. Kitchen to the left, a marble counter separating it from the living room. Couch, TV, bathroom down the hall. Single bedroom shared with a roommate. He offered me a seat and we started chatting. Small talk at first. Then things shifted. Mark started ranting about his roommate, how clingy he was, how lazy, how he always wanted more than what Mark was willing to give. His voice rose with each sentence, his pacing faster, arms more animated. He's always missing the bus and making me drive him everywhere. Mark spat, grabbing his phone and firing off texts like machine gun bullets. I should break his S, beat the F asterisk 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 out of him, maybe even kill him. I froze. My anxiety always had a hair trigger when it came to yelling. But this wasn't just yelling. This was rage. And it wasn't going anywhere good. I tried to de-escalate, calm him from the couch, voice low, hands still. But Mark was unraveling. He stormed into the bathroom and started trashing it. Glass shattering, objects slamming against the walls. Then a scream. He came stumbling out, clutching his hand. Blood dripping from his palm. F asterisk asterisk asterisk, he shrieked. It cut me. Apparently he'd smashed a bottle, probably mouthwash, and sliced himself deep. Instinct kicked in. I stood and tried to help. Told him we needed to clean the wound. Asked for a first aid kit. His kitchen was wrecked. Bathroom even worse. I found the kit and guided him to the sink. I warned him, this is going to sting. The warm water hit his wound, and suddenly he was a child, sobbing, pulling his hand away. Mark, if you're going to act like F asterisk 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 NG child, I'm not going to help you. The moment I said it, I regretted it. His eyes darkened. His whole face shifted. He got inches from mine, nose to nose, yelling, snarling, radiating fury. I backed up, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. My hands slid into my bag, fingers fumbling blindly until they wrapped around my pocket knife. I didn't want to use it, but in that moment, I wasn't sure I'd have a choice. Then I said something even dumber. You look just like he did that night. He knew about my abusive ex. I told him the story, poured it out during one of our long, vulnerable conversations months ago. And now, I saw the same haunted, violent look I thought I'd left behind. And he knew exactly what he was doing. Mark got in my face again, taunting, smirking. What? Scared now? I begged. I just want to go. Please let me leave. He stared, then, slowly, walked to the door, opened it. Get the F asterisk 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 out. I didn't wait. I walked toward the stairs. He followed 3 inches behind. I turned slightly. Please just go back inside. He leaned in, voice low and cold, and said, if I wanted to kill you, I would. Everything in my body screamed run. So I did. Down 3 flights of stairs, fumbling with my keys, adrenaline making my limbs shake. I yanked my car door open, jumped in, and dropped my damn keys. Classic horror movie moment, right? They weren't outside. I had to dig under the seat, sobbing, panicking, waiting for him to appear at the window. But when I looked up, he was watching me from the balcony with someone else beside him. I drove away as fast as I could. When I got home, I texted him one last time. You're a monster. Don't ever contact me again. I blocked him on everything. He tried to reach out with fake accounts later, but I never responded. I won't lie. For weeks, I kept my curtains closed, jumped at every knock, slept with the knife on my nightstand, because I realized something terrifying. Sometimes monsters don't need masks. They just need an unlocked door, a little trust, and a moment where you doubt your instincts. I was lucky, but I still think about that moment at the stairs. If I wanted to kill you, I would. There was no if in his eyes, only when. You've made it through the hour. The stories are over now, and the night is quiet again. Let the silence soothe you. Whatever followed you from the tales, leave it here. You're safe, you're calm, and you're already drifting deeper into rest. If you enjoyed these stories, consider subscribing to Dark Reddit for more nightly chills. Until next time, sleep well